Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Anderson with the new Joseph Ryder Anderson podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a deep dive I did into my 4 winter card streak with the new 2025. I can't believe it's 2025 already. Winter Cards Volume 1 for Union Arena. For those of you who don't know about my website or about me, josephryderanderson.com is a leading trading card game website read by several millions of readers every year. My main topics I cover currently, although this is always expanding, but currently it's the Pokemon TCG number 1. I'd say number 2 right now for me is Union Arena, partly just because of my own personal interest in that game, and then Disney Lorcana. So this podcast will probably be looking at all of those over time, but with a particular interest in Union Arena right now. It's a fun new game that I'm personally invested in. I play a lot, and I think it's definitely should be getting more exposure than it currently is. Now, for this podcast, we're going to be looking at a recent article. I would definitely recommend you checking that out. It's on my website, so I will link it in the notes and then the summary for this podcast episode. But it's basically highlighting a journey that I took from over the course of several weeks, earning 4 different winter cards. I think what was special about this is that this was not a situation where I was winning third place for these. It was each one of these 4 was from an undefeated first place run. And each win also featured a unique and custom deck that I tested myself and played. So I think that this is an opportunity to dive into some of these strategies. I would check out the article for deck lists and things like that. It's obviously I won't be getting into those here on a podcast format. Check out the deck lists themselves. I'll be sharing more info about what's unique about them, but you can actually go and see them if you want to build them yourself via the website. And we're going to dive into just about everything from the theory and the testing that went into each different deck, as well as the different matchups and unique insights from those matchups, those tournaments. So the goal of this isn't really just to show how awesome I am. I think it's more just to give you an idea of what it looks like to compete at a high level in Union Arena, as well as what it looks like to build your own unique custom decks. I think that's the most fun thing to me in playing trading card games. It's not just the competing, it's the testing different strategies and having them work out, especially when they're custom. And I love the creative process in that. It's very similar to the creative process of building a website or writing an article or creating a podcast. And I think that that's my favorite thing about TCGs. So I think that's the biggest takeaway you're going to get from this article, as well as I think some mindset things, right? I think a lot of people get hung up in wanting to just always win all the time. But in reality, TCGs are just as much about losing as they are winning. And that's a key theme for each one of these winter card wins, is they only came about after some interesting defeats from which, I was able to learn. And I think it's something that any TCG player can do. They can learn from their losses and turn them into bigger and better wins. And they can even learn from just little things they notice. I'm always, I'm trying not to be too down after I lose. I think it's a key thing is don't ever go on and on about what you could have done better, after you lose a match, because your opponent doesn't really care if they beat you. They're happy they won. So they don't really care about all the things that could have gone differently. It also doesn't really matter because losing is such a fundamental part of playing. You can't win without losing. You can't win a lot without losing a lot. So it doesn't really matter. Losing doesn't really matter. It's more just a stepping stone, right? So for the store tournaments, less than 1 month after they started, I was able to complete my 4-card winner set, all first place. And that was with taking a week off because I actually was in Disneyland covering the Lorcana North America Championships. So I didn't even play for a week. So it's really over the course of 3 weeks, winning undefeated 4 different tournaments. The first one was on January 3rd with Purple Bleach. This is a pretty standard for me Purple Bleach build. I tend to raid with my Purple Bleach. I know that a lot of people play Purple Bleach raidless. I do play it raidless if that's what would help the most in a particular moment, right? Like if it's really just you got the 4K bodies in your hand and you want to throw them out there to gain a strategic advantage in the field, I will do that. But I actually prefer to raid with my Bleach deck. So, I run 3 Rukias, 3 Rukia 3 costs and 3 Rukia 4 costs, as well as I only run 2 of the Ichigo impact characters in this particular list, and I do run the 4/4 Renji, really looking to raid as much as possible. And I run a 4, basically the full playset of all Ichigo, so you have tons of consistency there, right? With the 4 0-cost Ichigos, 4 1-cost Ichigos, 4 3-cost Ichigos, and then the 4 5-cost and 2 4-cost. I think you could even get away with adding in some more 4 costs if you wanted to. But that's the list I get built. It's pretty consistent. In the article I mentioned that the night before this winter card win, I had actually faced one of my good friends and solid player in the final round of a Bleach rare battle, and I had actually gone undefeated in the only rare battles I'd done. So before this, I'd done a Bleach rare battle and a Code Geass rare battle and gone completely undefeated in those. So this was the first rare battle that I lost. So sort of like my streak was over, and it's funny because going into that tournament, I actually didn't think I cared whether or not I won, because I'd already gotten a Bleach winner card. So at this point, I was mostly just playing for fun, and I built sort of a custom build that I hadn't really tested much and brought it. And the funny thing is once I was at the tournament, I realized how much I actually did want to win. So I was a little bit bummed to not win, but it wasn't so much that I was bummed to lose. It was more just I felt like I wasn't playing at my best because I wasn't playing an optimized list or a deck that I really felt was super strong. I was just kind of testing something out, which is not bad to get second place at I think it was 17 players or so at that tournament, getting second place in that sort of circumstance. But anyways, the next night I really wanted to give it my all and use a deck that I knew was good. And it was also the first tournament I went to for the new volume 225 volume 1 starter deck tournament, and I really wanted that Rengoku card because I was just watching Demon Slayer for the first time, had just seen the Mugen Train sort of arc, and I really wanted to get that Rengoku winner card. And so I went. Partly why I chose Purple Bleach wasn't just because of the reason I'd said, like wanting to kind of get that redemption arc, but it was also because I felt Purple Bleach did perform pretty strongly against Code Geass Purple. And at that time, people were really on a Code Geass Purple kick, right? So this was early January, right after the holidays. People hadn't had a chance to play a whole lot yet with Code Geass, and it had done really well at a top level tournament. I myself put at the top of my tier list for all of the decks in Union Arena, not just Code Geass. Playing it myself, even before the set came out, I could tell that this deck was going to be, no joke, really strong. It has just so many pieces that you want in a strong Union Arena deck. So I knew people would be playing this deck at this tournament, so I wanted to play Purple Bleach. I tested it a bit against Code Geass, memorized some different plays. I think the key thing that helps in that matchup for me is that you can play more aggressively with Bleach Purple than you can with Code Geass most of the time. Code Geass, it is a 5 energy deck, so you're looking to establish that 5 energy line. With Purple Bleach, you can get away with most of the time just having four energies on the energy line, and you're only reaching to the 5th energy for Ichigo, the 5-cost Ichigo, which is a solid card, but you can win without it. So whereas Code Geass, your main win condition is revolving around the Gurren play, right? I think Gurren, the forced block Gurren, I think is one of the strongest cards in the game right now. So you really need to have a strong energy line, have to be very cautious not to exert, and you can brick a little more easily, right? Because if you're not getting everything you need for that 5-cost energy line, that could be a problem. So anyways, I wanted to bring Purple Bleach for that specific matchup that night. I ended up going against a blue Sukuna Nanami build, which I find is relatively even between Purple Bleach and that build. And then also 2 different purple Code Geasses, which I was able to beat. And the reason I won usually was actually because they were overextending. So that 5-cost energy line did end up coming into play in that tournament. So that was my first winner card. Winner card number 2. Again, I had been at a tournament the night before and lost. That was not actually a volume 2 store tournament, because actually it was a tournament that they hadn't gotten their stuff yet. So that was really Still kind of a volume one, or that was for the previous winter cards with C2 and all that. But for this tournament, I had been testing. This was after I'd taken a week off of play, so I was a little bit unsure what to play. I had been playing Lorcana more and kind of in the Lorcana world, so I was trying to get back into Union Arena at that point, and I had not played Code Geass Purple competitively yet, and I really loved the Code Geass Purple deck, but I really wanted to do something different with it, and I felt like from messing around with different builds, I felt like the Checkmate card could be a really strong differentiator, especially when you pair it with the Gurren Force Block. The Gurren Force Block really is your strongest attack in that entire deck, and it's a very unique card. It's sort of like, it reminds me a lot of Kurapika, and Kurapika, was once one of the top deck in the format early on in the English format, with that snipe ability. And Gurren has that kind of a strategic advantage where you get removal and impact. And I think with Checkmate, you're really looking to double down on that advantage, so you can get an impact +2 hit if you do it right. So in the first tournament, I really didn't do very well with this strategy. I think I went too hard into the Checkmate strategy. I was playing too hard in that Gurren play, as well as I had just pulled the serialized number 75 Tanjiro earlier that day, so I was freaking out to say the least, and I played horribly that night. And my opponents played really well, so it's a bad combination. I think, if your head's not fully in it, you can still get away if you get lucky, or if your opponents aren't fantastic. But my opponents did very well, and I ended up just leaving early from that tournament to kind of regroup. And I went back the next day, made some changes. The deck list you can see in the article that I'm talking about in the notes. And I was running just 2 of the Checkmate as opposed to 4 the night before. And 4 was just way too much. And I went back and changed some other things. I added back in the 2-cost Lelouch for that removal. Really made it a more well-rounded deck instead of playing just solely into that Gurren force block attack. And that paid off with another undefeated run that night. So now moving on to a super interesting tournament. And this is probably my favorite Union Arena memory to date. And this was for the 3rd winter card, and this was actually playing the purple Gyutaro build from Demon Slayer. And so this tournament took place on January 25th, just a day after the official booster pack released. So most people didn't really have their cards yet for Demon Slayer. And as I found out from the tournament, a lot of people actually didn't know what a lot of these cards did yet. So I was lucky enough to get some product early, like I sometimes do with this card game. And I was able to test quite a bit throughout the week at different tournaments, and I landed on a build for Gyutaro that really focused on the raid Gyutaro, left out the Daki raid, the 3-cost Daki raid. I found that she was a little bit of a liability because she only has 3,500 BP. So even if you raid with her, that's only during your turn. So she's not really a strong 4K body like Gyutaro can be if you play in vanilla, or raidless, or if you play Enmu, which is another huge card for this deck. I think a big play for this deck too is also including the sideline engine, is what I call it. And that's the sideline engine that's typically included with the Muzan build. So you're using your lower your head, you're using your lower 4, you're sidelining your own characters in order to get some added effects and to also create openings on your opponent's field. I think Lower Your Heads is a strong card for only 3 costs. You're removing any card out there. And this could also be a really good card for the post One Punch Man format, right? Where you can't necessarily remove those 10k bodies. But anyways, this build also included Akaza. So that's the 6-cost Akaza Demon character who you can play active. It's 2 action, 2 AP card. So you got to set up properly. You got to have 2 cards in your hand apart from him, so you can sideline those, and then he gains snipe and impact. So that's a powerful closing move. So I included 2 of those. The funny thing is that this night, this 20-person tournament actually went pretty quick. So Akaza I don't think came out during this entire tournament. But the other cards, Enmu, the raid Enmu, the Gyutaro were clutch for sure. Let's go over some of the matchups. So round 1 was against Hunter x Hunter gone in Friends. Pretty easy. I won't go into that too much. It was a pretty easy game, honestly. But round 2 versus Lancelot was tough. Lancelot is a strong matchup against Gyutaro, mostly because Gyutaro, he acts as sort of like almost like a baby impact, right? The way Gurren kind of acts as like a baby snipe, right? So Gyutaro doesn't technically have impact, but if you don't block him, he's gonna attack again. So, or sorry, if you do block him and lose, he's gonna attack again. So for the most part, you're letting people are forced to just let Gyutaro through. So you can kind of think of Gyutaro as an impact character. Late game, he's even better because your opponents have to block a lot of times, and then you can actually just remove multiple characters in a turn if you get things set up towards the end of it. But against Lancelot, if your opponent is fielding 5,000 BP bodies, the problem there is Gyutaro can be just blocked. So it really counters your Gyutaro. Luckily, I was able to rush against this opponent, and it was not a big deal. I didn't have to face down a ton of 5k bodies, so it wasn't an issue. Round 3 was a tough battle against Purple Code Geass. Luckily, I had tested a lot against Purple Code Geass, and it wasn't a particularly concerning matchup for me. I think, Gyutaro has no trouble hitting through that deck. The main thing, it's just moving faster. I think in this particular matchup too, because the newness of this deck, of being made of cards that had only just come out, my opponent did not know what Gyutaro did. So there was a situation where he tried to block Gyutaro, and Gyutaro just restood. Obviously, I didn't warn him about that ahead of time, but I would have if he had asked. Another thing too is my opponent did not know that you couldn't play. He thought that Gawain worked as like a Lelouch. So if you play the Power of Absolute Obedience, you restand. I had to tell him that doesn't work. So that also set him back a bit. But I think other than that, it really was not those things that win me the game. Those things helped me get further ahead. But I think, just getting a stronger starting move. My opponent did, again, a common theme with Purple Code is my opponent did overextend his energy line a bit, which did not help him. And he also hit like a special off of my life, which is never great that puts you ahead usually as well. So all of those things combined made that I never was behind in that matchup, but my opponent definitely was a solid player, and if I had, I could very easily have slipped behind, so that was definitely a nail biter, but a very fun battle. Finally, the last match, top table, this was deciding first place of that 20-player tournament, was against Blue JJK and Nanami. And it was a solid build, solid deck. There really isn't a whole lot to say about this battle. I got ahead early. I really got everything I needed, set up the board, played a bunch of raidless characters on top of some raid Gyutaro, and as well as raid Gyutaro, and just kind of ran down my opponent's life. So that was the main thing. I think, again, my opponent did not know what Gyutaro did, and he restood after taking a block, right? So that didn't win me the game, didn't hurt either. And it really just, it ended up being a pretty fast battle. I think just the speed and consistency of this Gyutaro deck can be hard to deal with, especially if you are not familiar with how it works. So that was the third one. I think now the fourth and final winner card. Again, another unique deck, each one of these with a unique deck. And this was a custom build, and this was playing my custom Tanjiro Yellow deck. So playing Tanjiro Yellow, I had seen a lot of people and heard a lot of talk of people basically saying the way to play this deck is with the raid Nezuko, where you're just going for kind of a rush play, going quick, going hard, and using Nezuko to swap in attackers just to sort of overwhelm your opponent. I didn't get any Nezuko raids in my boxes, so I wasn't super tempted to play with that. I also really wanted to try out the Tokito Hashira 5-cost character. He just seemed so strong, and had performed well in my tests too, in my practice rounds. And so I really wanted to build something that I could use the excellent removal from the 4-cost 2-action Tanjiro combined with Nezuko to be able to basically remove anything with 4k or less, and then combine that with the Muchiro Tokito basically forced rest. And that works when you play him. You get like a freeze that the next time that character should stand, he doesn't, or he or she doesn't. And then also when Tokido's sidelined, you get to choose a character and switch them to resting. So it's a strong offensive and defensive play. On top of the fact that Tokido also has a 4,000 BP stat, which makes him a good attacker. So I think the other spice in this deck, the first one is just briefly with Shinobu. She's a solid character. You can use her to draw a card, or you can use her to rest a character, so she adds some versatility. You don't have enough Hashira that you're going to be able to do her all at once thing, but she is a solid, versatile character you can include in this deck. And then the last spicy pick was 4 Tanjiro from the starter deck. So most people are using the 4 Tanjiro with Impact, who lets you bring back and play a Nezuko from your sideline. Whereas I actually, again, I had traded one of those. I didn't think I was going to build this deck, so I had traded one of those characters to somebody for a blinged out Gyutaro SR star. But on top of that, I only had 2, and I had 4 from the starter deck upgrade deck article that I'd done. And I actually really liked the 4 of the starter deck Tanjiro a little better. Because of how my experience with Enmu and that 500 BP boost can be so consequential. It can help you really pull ahead in a tight match against decks that typically raid 4Ks, which is the majority of the top decks right now. And so that Tanjiro, the starter deck, who gains that extra 500 and impact, felt more impactful in this deck than because I'm not going for the Nezuko play. It just felt more impactful than the other Tanjiro. So I ran 4 of those. And as you'll see in the matchups, it really helped. I think it really helped primarily against, actually, no, 2 of the battles I won. It was super helpful. It was helpful against Kurapika, because they weren't hitting their 5K Kurapikas, they were hitting their impact 4K Kurapikas. And so I was able to block those more than once with the starter deck Tanjiro. And then it was also super helpful against Code Geass Purple, where I was able to avoid a forced block impact attack from a Gurren. So it's definitely a powerful card. You have to try it yourself, see what you like better between the 2 of those Tanjiro. I'm definitely liking the Tanjiro from the starter deck. So I think that was definitely a good decision. I think the only matchup that surprised me that night was against a Demon Slayer Red. And I think that Demon Slayer Red is not getting the kind of appropriate level of attention yet, because that is a strong deck. I think its main issue is it doesn't have very strong removal. You have the Rengoku 5 cost, which I would recommend including 4 of those in your deck, but he can only remove 3K BP characters, so you're not getting that upper end removal, but you have this incredible host of powerful attackers. And my opponent was not running the Tengen, but I think the Tengen is one of the strongest, where he has that double attack for a turn. So you just have these crazy powerful attackers to choose from in that deck. And so the guy I was playing against was definitely behind, but he was sitting on, I think, 2 or 3 of the final triggers in his hand. So he was able to quickly rebuild his board and threaten me towards the end, despite, owning the game the whole time. And I still had the upper hand even at the end, but it was getting close enough where, I think in this situation, the yellow color trigger helped. I also had enough impact to finish out the game. But at one point I was staring down 2 Zenitsu raid, 2 Inosuke raid, and it was just ugly. It could have gone badly. Luckily I won. But I definitely think that deck has a lot going for it, and a lot more than people realize. And I also am surprised by how strong the yellow color trigger is, because yellow color trigger, that forced rest that lasts a turn, is pretty insane. It's actually the strongest, I'd say, the single strongest color trigger right now. I don't think that's going to change. So it's the single strongest color trigger. So I think, with the combination of those Tokitos and those 2 cost, 2 AP cost Tanjiros and the Nezukos, you're getting some insane removal, and also the color trigger. You're getting some insane removal / stun. To me, it really feels like if for those who have played these decks, it feels like mashing up the Bleach Purple and the Toshiro Hitsugaya decks into one. It's just got an incredible amount of versatility. So that's my custom build for yellow. Tanjiro. So that's it. That's the 4 run, the undefeated, different decks. I think the hardest thing about that was just getting these different decks to work. And that means playtesting a lot. You can't just theory build and go to a tournament and win. You have to play test. So what I do is I just run tons of battles against myself, right? Like even while I'm doing other things, I'll just take a break. You know, if I'm working on my website or writing an article or whatever, I'll just take a break and just run a match, right? And I just track it to see how it does, right? It's sort of almost scientific, where you just test it against different meta decks, and you track, like, is it able to win a best 2 out of 3? That's a really good sign to me. It's like if it's able to win a best 2 out of 3 against a meta deck, that's a really, really good indicator that that deck can perform well at a tournament, right? So yeah, that's everything. I hope you enjoyed. Again, check out the article on josephryderanderson.com under, you'll see it in the comment in the notes, but it's under the Union Arena blog, and I will catch you next time.